This is really great to be here. I'm enjoying sharing kind of what I've been doing for like the last 20 years. I knew that I wasn't going to just act all my life, frankly, because life is too important, and there's a lot of things that we have to do other than look at ourselves in the mirror for, your whole lifetime. I wasn't going to do it. But in the meantime, on a more serious note, back 20 years ago when I started the program, I started it because I had studied a lot about the brain. I studied a lot about meditation, if you will. I had meditated since '72. I was looking at all the research on these things, and also spent 8 years when I was starting out to be successful, and I was actually experiencing a lot of panic attacks because I didn't know what was going on. I was at a quick rise to stardom, and with that, it was like, what am I going to do, and what's happening to me? So I did suffer a little bit of sort of a mental setback, and not really know how to fix it. So in going to a doctor, I started realizing how to start looking at the world differently and looking at my own brain and my psychology, my past, my history, and actually gained some incredible ways of focusing my personal life experience in a different way. And that was very helpful. In the meantime, I was very interested in neuroscience because it seemed to me everything started from that because of what happened to me. And I was not like that. I was a very happy girl. I was this. So suddenly I was experiencing depression and anxiety and all that stuff. And I moved through it in a way that actually helped me understand more about myself, learning about the brain, more about myself, and understanding what quieting the mind, and let's not call it meditation, okay? Because it doesn't have to be called that. It's really what you do when you quiet your mind, you breathe, you focus, you sit there for a while, and you realize what's happening neurologically. What's happening neurologically is that the amygdala, that's the fight or flight system we have in our midbrain, is very important. It saves us. But we're not lions, tigers, and bears anymore. We're dealing now with an area of anxiety, fear, uncertainty, all of those things that are going on, and pre-COVID, actually, because 20 years ago when I did research with children, the third leading cause of death was suicide from ages 10 to 15, and second leading cause of suicide from 15 to 21. This is not possible. It's not fair. These children have to live a life and to feel extremely being able to experience a childhood. So I was hurt. It hurt me so much that at that point in time, I decided, after creating a documentary on joy, 9/11 happened, and I wasn't going to be putting out that documentary. That wasn't going to happen, because that documentary basically was defying all the things that people were experiencing, which was fear, anxiety, uncertainty, all of these things. Anger, by the way. Anger is basically fear in disguise. So now what we have is, after realizing this, I put all I learned in the happiness doc into MindUp. So MindUp became an experiment. I wanted all children to understand their brain. Why? Because we ask them to use it and they don't know anything about it. And I thought, well, this is crazy. I mean, we're out here teaching kids and they don't even know what's sitting on top of their shoulders, and they don't know the power of it. So I thought, well, let's just do Power Rangers here. I mean, they've got to know what their brain can do and all the things that it can respond to by our behavior, our thoughts, and also our intention, because they actually now learn that by doing the brain and getting quiet, that amygdala, that part of the brain which deals with fear and anger and uncertainty and all those things, and anxiety and stress, can be mitigated by quieting down, quieting the mind, breathing, focusing. Oh my God, what's happening? Well, that means that the executive function, or the prefrontal cortex, as they call it, lights up. We get to think better, we get to make better decisions, we get to analyze things better, and actually at the end of the day, feel a little bit more productive and more empowered. Now, what's wrong with that? I mean, if we can actually help children in the classroom get to that level, then I think we have done God's work. Because right now, we can't get them. they are really in pain. They don't know what's happening. Their neurological development isn't basically been thwarted. They've been little ones wearing masks. We've got kids that are incarcerated in their homes. They've got abuse going on left, right, and center because the parents are upset. They have no patience. They don't know what's happening to them. I mean, we have a lot of work to do. But the most important thing that we have to realize is that all this doesn't work without our teachers. It doesn't work without our educators saying, I'm going to change the way I do things. I am now going to change the way I teach. I'm going to change my experience itself. And I am going to actually understand more about how I can manage my emotions. Because when you manage your emotions, then your children will change around you. And and children now have been seen, because I've researched all of this, of course, and it's all evidence-based program, it's amazing. But the teachers will be reminded by the students, as the students will go home and tell their parents, take a brain break. They'll tell their parents, take a brain break. It's just, so I have stories that go on forever. They're great. But children are empowered. And our teachers must be believing that if we just step out to create change, that we will make a big, big difference in the experience of these children in the world. So I've done this for 20 years. We actually have presence in 47 countries now. So MindUp is global. But what I would like it to be, seeing that I'm a Californian, I would like it to be global right here in California, and be able to have our children experience this. Because if we can't put humanity back into the human when they're 3 and 4 and 5 and 6 and 7, we're not going to make it. Because this is an area where the human condition, the ability to have an emotional connection, to be able to have community, to understand what it is, to be able to have the power to find a more stress-free environment internally, and to know that happiness is an inside job, guys. We get children to know that, then we're going to be able to get over some of the problems we're dealing with now. Because if we don't do this now, then we're not going to win at the game of life. So we're at an apex right now, and the golden age of neuroscience. By the way, I didn't know that 20 years ago. You know, hang in there, 20 years, gee, just flew by. And now it matters. It really matters. And it's an inarguable, indefensible change in how we are going to look at our education here in California and in America. So that's where I am. I can answer any question. Let's chat about it. I mean, and I'm going to take this off. Is that okay? I worked up a sweat.
Well, is this on? Yeah? Yes. While you're doing that, so Goldie, clearly you have the ability to command a room when you walk in. And I'm imagining that there are a lot of people, everybody knows who you are, but I'm not sure everybody knew that what your involvement has been. And one of the things you said that strikes me is I think probably most of us in the room can relate to or know someone who, whether it was panic attacks, anxiety, stress, depression, something, said, I need to figure this out for myself, whether it's trying mindfulness, whether it's doing other things. But it's pretty striking that you, and in the professional role you were in and the acclaim that you had, you didn't just make something up for yourself. Tell people a little bit more about MindUp, because again, you can talk about the 4 pillars of MindUp, but talk about your 3 years spent creating the curriculum, working in Vancouver with the researchers to create it. Because again, part of what we're talking about today, a lot of conversation is how do you take the research and get it all the way out into the real world
Exactly.
as quickly as possible. So do you want to elaborate on that a little
That's
bit?
a great question, and it actually is grit. The answer is grit. If you believe in something and you walk away from it, I mean, this was a hard job for me. I believe so much because I was seeing this. So when I created this in Vancouver, in my meditation room, where the rain was falling on the roof, which was made of glass, I went into a place where I thought, why aren't our children learning about what we already know? They don't have context to anything about their brain, how it works. So I started to put together these different facets. So we have 4 pillars, yes. We do learn about your brain. They have very simple ways of learning about 3 parts of their brain: their hippocampus, their amygdala, and their prefrontal cortex. And they learn about what they do. And then they learn about quieting the mind. And when they learn about quieting the mind, we call that a brain break, because every kid knows every brain needs a break. And when they take their break, and so does every person in this room. And so when you quiet down, and we do this with any kind of sound, okay? It could be a chime, it could be whatever. And the child begins to follow, or we begin to follow. It's sort of a thread the brain begins to follow, okay? It's good, it keeps it focused. And then they turn their hands over, they can't hear for anymore, and then they breathe. And they breathe for like 2 minutes. So 3 minutes a day, 3 minutes for 3 times a day. And what happens to it is the brain begins to entrain to this thing, and the brain goes, oh, I know what this is. But what's happening is the stress hormones go down. There's all kinds of issues that are neurologically and physically happening. So it isn't just, oh, goody, I get to take a brain break. It's feeding the brain. It's feeding the body. It's literally important for them. And when they do it 3 times a day, they become people who are not disruptive anymore. They start saying, you forgot our brain break, Mrs. Jason. And that's what happens. So that's that. Then we do mindful of our senses. And the reason we do that is all wrapped in your curriculum, by the way. The reason you do mindful of our senses is because everything, mindful smelling, mindful hearing. Children don't hear anymore, and neither does anybody else. They talk over each other. We learn to listen. What happens is the brain begins to look what that feels like. So we're actually focusing on something for a period of time. Listening is important. We need to figure out how to attend for longer periods of time. Our brain is so hijacked every day that there's no way we can think of one thing for any more than 3 minutes, if you're lucky. So this helps to entrain the brain to understand that they can focus for longer periods of time. It's like doing a pirouette as a ballet dancer, which I was. So I was a dancer when I started. So I have a mindfulness practice there anyway, because you have to realize that the body and the brain are one. Okay? So now we're doing all those, but we wrap it in our curriculum. So for instance, mindful movement and things are done with jumping jacks. 2 times 2 is 4, and the kids get up and they move. And so we have applications, right? Academic applications. And then the next section is basically positive psychology. So we do things to them that they think are soft skills. They're the most important skills to teach the brain to the kids to understand how to live in this world. How is it that I'm going to care? How is empathy going to be created? How is all this going to happen? It doesn't happen by itself. It happens because we, the people, have to figure out how we're going to help our children and us be able to go into the world with a heart and a mind and caring and an ability to basically come together to create solutions. And I think that's kind of my personality, is why I produced movies. My first movie that I produced merely because I didn't think we needed it. We didn't need to pay a producer. We were producers. So I made it on a practical level, right? Well, we have to do this on a practical level right now. We are definitely looking at this in a way to, how do we solve the problem? What are the solutions that we're looking at? You can't Band-Aid this problem anymore. You know, yes, we have social workers. I love them. We have psychologists. Yes, they're very important. But if we don't change the simple ethos of the classroom, simple, then we're not going to create preventative programs. And these wonderful people who are trying to help our kids are going to help one by one. They're not going to help when you walk in the room and you see, keep your mind up for happiness. Keep your mind up for love. Keep your mind up for learning. Keep your mind up for power. How are you going to help your children if we don't do that? And our money needs to be spent in these kind of programs. That's where our money needs to be spent. There's a lot of money here, but it really, really needs to be looked at as a power play. We have the money. What are we doing with it? We have the data. What are we doing with it? Brave, be brave. I was. I mean, I didn't want anybody to know Goldie Hawn made this thing because they'd look at it and go, oh, it's Goldie Hawn. She's just a, comedian. She's just an
But
actress.
your characters were so conducive for intellectual, rigorous, evidence-based practice. Just kidding. Why would they not take that seriously?
I mean, but it really made being realistic, as my father always said, stay real. And that's the kind of thing what I'm looking at, which is I have 7 grandchildren. I have 4 of the most amazing children. And I remember, I said to the kids, I could only help other children when you were grown. Because, Kurt and I were really good parents together. But until they were out in the world and being whole and amazing humans, I felt I could give my time to help other children. But I thought so big. And I thought, could it really happen? Could it really make a difference? And I dreamed so big that I said, I want this program, please, all over the world. I was in my meditation room, the rain is falling, and here was my affirmation. It was my dream that MindUp could work. It was the most researched program of all these, what they call SEL programs ever, aside from maybe PATHs. We did cortisol studies. We did cortisol. Our children were more able to manage their stress hormone. This was a 12-week study. I mean, this is unbelievable. If you can manage your stress hormone, you're already affecting your physical health for the rest of your life. If you prove that actually the cortisol actually is manageable and the control group wasn't, which would happen. The other thing was, what about the brain? So we did, Dr. Adele Diamond did brain basically to see how the executive function worked. They were much faster on the uptick. They were more focused there was, and the control group wasn't. And what happened is that MindUp went like this, and the control group in the baseline went down below baseline. So it shows you that children with no intervention, with nothing, will fail. So, I'm mixing my passion and love of children and love of life and love of our earth and all of it. And I know that we're the procurers of all of it because we were talking in the other room. The earth is a beautiful thing. We're the only people that can ruin it. People can make it happy. All emotions, the earth doesn't have emotions. We're guarded by them. We're basically, we live by them. And if we have no control over them, we have wars. We have hatred. We have killing. We have negative emotions surrounding us all the time. And if this is the way we want to be, reality does not happen because of the earth. It happens because of us. So we will create the world that we see, that we feel. So emotions are extremely important. So when we realize that our children are more able to manage their emotions by quieting down their amygdala and and open up their executive function, suddenly the light goes on. They figure out a problem. They can analyze. They can do these things and actually get happier. So, all this leads to a healthier life. Oh, by the way, we're doing an epigenetic study right now. And epigenetics is really, how does our environment affect our body? How does it affect our genetic expression? This is what we're doing for grown-ups. I was actually involved in one study. It's fantastic. Because if we find that we think right, we feel right, we quiet down, we reduce our stress, we really, really work at it, it's not that hard. Eat right, sleep, please sleep well. Melatonin works, take it. but and it's also good for you. But the truth is we can control these things because the genetics won't express into the worst way. They will actually sustain on a level. And that's what's happening with our children right now in this study that we're doing. So I'm as you see, I'm passionate, right? But because
I
of
love
the
she's
love.
passionate about epigenetics. I just have to say,
No.
we had such a cool conversation about. I majored in cellular molecular biology,
I know,
so
I love
who
this.
knew?
I love this. Well, you do explain it better than me.
Well, no, and you do. What I'm so struck by, Goldie, is you do such a fantastic job And it's, I hope everybody's getting the point of you start with Academy Award-winning actress, producer, director, everything, and then you go super informed, but way ahead of the curve. Because how long has MindUp been around? It's 20 years?
20,
So
almost
it's
21.
20 years. And for a lot of what I do speaking about it, going out, people think it's new. The early brain science is new and all these things. It had to have been that much more difficult 20 years ago, because if you said mindfulness, I'm just going to be honest here, I don't technically live in California. That was earthy, crunchy, granola,
It was.
California
Couldn't do
talk.
it.
Right? Like, people didn't say the word. And mindfulness was more palatable than meditation, but if I say that in Nebraska, it doesn't always, get people excited.
Right.
But doing that 20 years ago, right, and recognizing that, and then the brain science, right? There were covers of Time magazine and the Decade of the Brain and things like that. That there's this 20-year lag period for when we get out there, and you took it. I'm so stunned with what you were able to do. You took it and ran with it, practically like hot off the presses, right? As soon as we started to have the evidence base, and then you tracked down. You were also telling me, so epigenetics, what I like to describe to people. Epigenetics, I say we were a little short-sighted when we figured out the human genome. Like, yay for us, we figured out the entire sequencing. That was fantastic, opened all these doors. But at the time, do you remember the news accounts of that where we figured out the whole genome and maybe 95% of it is junk? Doesn't do anything, right? And there's the genes, and that's what we cared about, and everybody focused in on the genes.
Right.
And what did we discover? That context kind of matters, and in the case of genes, it's all the stuff around the genes that shape the molecules, that turn on and off the expression of the genes, which then leads to epigenetics. You may be born with a set of genes, but they are not your destiny. And it helps us explain, down to the molecular level, how experiences, whether it's trauma, supportive relationships, all those things day to day in the classroom, can literally determine which genes are expressed or not expressed, and those sorts of things really matter. So that is epigenetics. It's what's working on that sort of genetic foundation.
Right.
And there's huge impact with epigenetics.
I love it. I'm so excited about it because the more we know, the better we are. And that is a part of, I guess you could create wonder, right? We're talking about being in wonder. It's very, very important. And we were speaking about children and basically take them out in nature and sort of a mindful seeing. But if we all did that, I do that sometimes when I'm feeling dullard, and I'll go outside, I'll take a walk. And I'll take a walk because I want to focus in on the flowers, okay? So I go into the different roses and flowers, and I look at the petals, and I smell it, and I notice this rose smells different than this rose. I swear to God, I come home happier. It's important. Your brain absorbs all of that, all of it. What we feed our brain will come out. So if you're looking at bad TV and the news and so forth, you're just going to walk around with Eeyore. It's going to have you a cloud over your head all day. And then there are other ways when you have to tender yourself. So I think as teachers and educators, and I have so much respect, and I know the difficulties and the horrors that are going on right now, I don't want to lose any more teachers. We want to gain teachers with new perspective, a new way of looking at teaching. And we're also working at putting this in teachers' colleges right now because it has to start then. But in terms of knowing that you're pioneers in a new way of educating, then absorb it and own it and go out there and do it, because if we don't do it now, I don't know when.
So Goldie, earlier this morning there were some conversations. You would have loved some of the discussion. First of all, the relational aspects and the support for teachers and the lack of manpower and the kind of burden that's being put on teachers, even before the pandemic, but certainly during the pandemic. And the sort of natural tendency, right? Teachers are burdened and stressed with lots going on, to then say, well, here's one more program, whether it has to do with helping kids learn to read or whatever it might be. So I'm going to ask you a very concrete question, because there's a lot of people in the room who I think want me to ask the question, which is, so people hear you, and I'm sure people are very impressed with the evidence base, and this concept sounds really good. What would it take to implement MindUp for people who don't know about it? If you're going to say, right now, you're going to walk into a room and you're going to tell people, this is what you should be doing, you're going to tell the policymakers, here's what needs to be spent. talk about a little bit the logistics. How much time in the classroom are you like taking away from other things?
Okay, that's a good
and what's the
question.
cost and what's the dependency on the teachers and what sort of training do people need to have to actually make this happen as opposed to just, you sound fabulous, this sounds great.
Right, got it. So we're mindup.org. Okay, we're all online. So you can also do a buy for, we have somebody there that can work with you as well. It was beyond, obviously Zoom would be. But it's a very, very beautiful program. It's beautiful to look at. I wanted to create a program that was a pleasure to be involved with, right? So MindUp for teachers is basically to get accredited and to become, a MindUp facilitator is mindup.org. That's what it is. And to become a teacher and become a partner of the whole program is $120, okay? I kept it very, very inexpensive. With that comes another way of doing it. If you're just a teacher and you want that, then it's one other price. If you want to mind up for parents, which we have a whole parent program, that's another one. If you want the whole thing, you've got all of it. So we have teachers, we have schools, we have MindUp parents, we have MindUp for educators, but it's real educator care and about how to basically take care of yourself and what are the things you need to do. And then we have another part of it, which I love, which is we've got all of our expert series, and they have mindfulness people who will tell you what mindfulness is going in their brain. It's Amishi Jha. She's a neuroscientist or a neuropsychologist, I think. And she's amazing, okay? She just wrote a book called Peak Mind, amazing. We have breathing experts that teach you how to breathe. We have a cardiologist that is showing the connection between the heart and the mind, the brain and the heart, and that strong connection, which is really important for our own health and our own realization that our brain does speak to our body, and to know that that's one amazing piece. So there's many, many areas that are One Happiness on Sean Aker is talking about happiness. He's got 4 videos on happiness. Sonia Lubowirsky's got two videos on happiness. These are all experts in their field, right? So, and it goes on and on. So it's a great, what do you call it, family to belong to. So that's what it is. It's mindup.org. It's MindUp for Life. And you'll see all the different areas that you could actually choose to become a part of.
And Goldie, if somebody was going to implement it in a classroom, what is it, how much time does it take? Do you just choose, or is there a curriculum or a schedule?
Yes, it's modular. So the only thing that we say is that know the brain, and we have that right there for everyone to understand, and brain break, okay, and a pro-social behavior. And we have now when you do mindful of your senses, you can choose one for a month and just go, okay, we're going to do this on learn about China. Okay, and what we'll do is, or we're going to use something, we just have everything put into their curriculum. So it's a way of looking at it, and we have all that for you. So it's like, what are the academic applications? How do I write something on gratitude? What are you grateful for, and what's the story around it? So you can do, creative writing. As long as it's basically part of their world, and you can pick, because we have different areas that you can choose from. It's not just you have to do this, this, and this. The only thing that's important is know your brain, do your brain breaks 3 times a day, and also create at least one pro-social behavior. Okay, this is what it is. So what it does is it buys time in the classroom. Why? Because children do not act out. You have a quieter classroom. You do brain breaks 3 times a day. When you do the brain break in the classroom, after about a few weeks, because they get used to it, they start toning together. They start really in training together. And they like it. It's quiet. It's good for the teacher. It's a very, very important thing. And it's not just once in the morning. No, this is part of your day. So they have their brain break intelligent. They know now what it feels like. And so is the educator. So what does it take out of your day? Nothing. It adds time to your day. You're not the disciplinarian. And especially after time doing MindUp. I will share with you, I just found out, which is great, and we have a whole school district in Illinois. And we found out from not the principal, but the superintendent, that particular district had no learning loss at all during COVID. they've been doing MindUp for 5 years. That speaks volumes at how the children, in the state of mind of the children, were able to absorb information. When you're anxious, when you have a frenzied mind, and our children come into the classroom with this, they're not going to learn.
You know, I've been thinking while you're talking.
Okay, what? Tell me.
Well, this idea, I mean, COVID really exaggerated it for people. But this idea, and Dr. Miller can correct me if I get the kind of distillation wrong, but this idea that you're literally, your amygdala engages, it shuts off your prefrontal cortex. Like, you're not doing like, I'm going to stop, think through my actions, take on all this new information, process it, when you are threatened. And threat, not just saber-tooth tiger threat, but in today's world, any sort of, anxiety causing anything.
Right.
So this idea, what I love is that it's such a practical way of doing it, explaining it, implementing it. But I think what you're also giving people is a sense of, you kind of have to sell people on that idea. Back to your soft comment.
Yeah.
Because I don't know about you, you don't get what I get. I get the, you must be a very nice person, right? Like the
Oh, wow.
nice pediatrician from the middle of America. That's nice and warm and fuzzy, but now we need to get back to work. When what you need to do, and then the brain science really supports this, is you are literally teaching kids and teaching the caregivers, we heard about this morning as well, and the caregivers, how do you switch back into that mode for optimal learning as opposed to under threat and not processing information?
That's right, because we want, the big thing is, and what you guys are pressured for, is grades, all these things that they're just not going to, God love them, but, we love grades. I was a okay student. And I also had a little bit of dyslexia, I did have that. So, but I did great. I did fine, What we have to do is teach children how to relax so they actually can have a life experience. Because if they live in fear, and they live in this sort of fear-based whatever, what's going to happen next, uncertainty, and then we call that sort of brain frenzy, right? And we as adults have it too. Of course we do, even like huge. How do we learn? How do we get out of it? How do we get excited about the day and get in a state of wonder or a state of being present with your child? How are we going to be present with them? So the idea of understanding, of cutting off that circuitry, what's going on in the fight, flight, or freeze, it's so not hard. It's just take a break, take time, breathe, focus. I swear, it's so simple. You have no idea. Surrender to that for 5 minutes. You don't have to go into some crazy cave somewhere. Just do it because your brain wants it. It's so simple. So that's the thing about learning and timing in the classroom. Children.
And let me have you elaborate, because you've talked about, we talked about this, but
Yeah.
you've talked about also, today we discussed a lot about personalized, individualized learners and neurodiverse learners. And I know you've got some particular interests in now new kind of areas of research, I think with kids who are autistic. But what do you find in terms of this being implemented as a program that serves all learners?
Well, that's a really good, so people say, oh, well, is this just for at-risk children? No. Is this for special needs children? No. This is not that. This is a foundational program that we're giving children from ages 3 all the way to 8th grade, including when we go into their endocrine system. So they begin to understand why they feel so floozy and crazy and weird and wacky, because everything's being pruned and the brain's going, you're going like a lawnmower over all these circuits, and it's like, oh. So they need
Dr. Miller was just talking about the brain being pruned and I'm just kidding, he didn't say it. You put it a little differently.
But it's what happens, and it's like why they slam doors 1 minute and then they want to cuddle with you the next. But I mean, that's sort of the way it works. How did I get off on that?
Oh, we were just talking about neurodiverse learners. It was for everybody.
Oh, yeah.
So
anyway, so the program is for everyone. So there's I've got stories, but one of them I remember was a kid who was in a regular classroom. He had autism. He was an autistic kid. And his hands were shaking, and they were going to take a test, and his hands were shaking. And one of the kids in the classroom, and they were a MindUp school, said maybe we could do a brain break together. It might help him. So they went and they sat in a circle, and by the way, you don't have to sit. It doesn't matter where you do your brain break. You do a circle. You can be in your desk. It's not about that. And they sat down and they did their brain break, and he stopped shaking his hands. and he was able to take his test. So this is the stuff that you think, oh, this stuff is so simple. It's very, very powerful, guys. These things about when you say, gratitude. Gratitude has taken more people in all the research, and I'm talking adults, out of depressed beds where they could not get out because they had to do gratitude every day, 5 things for I don't know how many weeks. I don't remember that part. It changed them. They weren't out, running, this closer you get them or whatever. It wasn't like, oh, it was so wonderful. They literally were functional because it's a powerful thing for the brain. Dopamine is emitted, there's little neurotransmitters in there that are emitted, and it actually can work so beautifully on your state of mind without you really realizing what's happening, right? So that's what we call surroundings, thinking right, the ability to actually embrace someone, or to actually we have perspective taking. Okay, so we read books and then we talk to the kids and they say, well, what do you think about this? Why do you think that character did that? Or, what's your thought about that? Get them thinking about other people. Our children are losing their empathetic instinct. They're not feeling empathy anymore. And it's really hard to be able to figure out ways that we can help them. But we can't help them by saying, you have to feel for others, you gotta, no, they have to have an experience that opens their brain so they're able to actually experience the feeling rather than the cognitive notion or the words don't mean anything, but the experience does.
And if people aren't aware, I believe you are accredited, your program is accredited by CASEL,
Yeah.
the Collaborative on Academic, Social, Emotional Learning.
Yeah.
And you've talked about outcomes, but and again, whether it's a MindUp school or just a teacher who decides to do it independently, what are some of the outcomes you see? What is the, collaboration with CASEL been like? Because again, part of what I think is, what you describe is so appealing. It's catchy, it sounds fun to implement, it sounds like it's really positive, but then you've tied it and anchored it to all this really good science evaluation, the new research and adaptations. So tell me about the CASEL part, but then also tell people what kind of outcomes you see. I mean, you've given some examples, but if there's more that you want to share, because that makes it all the more compelling.
What happened with CASEL is that, I was still young in terms of this program, although the research wasn't. Research was out. And it was very impressive. But CASEL wasn't doing anything to do with brain breaks. It wasn't doing anything to do with brain science. It was all, habitual sort of nice behavior, empathy, pet a dog or bring a baby in. And I don't mean to belittle that. It's important. However, it doesn't get down in the nitty gritty. And what they had trouble with, it took almost 2 years because they had no template for that. They saw all the research. It was awesome. I mean, the woman that was researching the program, she was researching at that time like 25 years of these social and emotional programs. And she said, I've never seen, like in 12 weeks, a children change so much because they actually went through the program with fidelity, meaning we kept it going. And the teachers had a ball. And many teachers said, God, I was going to leave, but they were ready to leave. But they have control of their classroom now, and it's a pleasure. So in terms of that, that was something that ultimately took place. So it was getting the program to work. We were only in Vancouver. School district.
Were you University of British Columbia?
British Columbia.
Which, if people don't know, is one of the really kind of big areas for research in social emotional learning. They've got professors of compassion.
Yeah.
They do a lot of this work, but linking it to the neuroscience and to all sorts of
Right.
things. So when someone says they were in Vancouver at UBC, they mean they went to sort of one of the epicenters of the research really early on in this
Exactly,
process.
which I didn't know either.
But
I
great
learned
that
later.
you went there.
I know. And then I spent a lot of time at UBC after that. But I mean, that what happened was, and this is interesting, it was basically the chancellor or the school, the head of the schools, right, at that point. And he was the head of education, and he decided to take MindUp on. That was a top-down decision. We had trainings all over Vancouver, from Coquitlam and all the other regions, and it went like wildfire. Today, there probably isn't an educator anywhere in Canada that's never heard of MindUp. So it just caught fire. I was like, oh my God, this is amazing. But without the school superintendent coming in and saying, we're going to do this. So that's why bottom up, take the program, use it for yourself, take it into the classroom, you will find a better classroom. You'll have more fun. But having it top down is the way you want it, because first of all, you've got buy-in from the top. You literally have your systems, which are the social emotional people around it. So they have great systems there where they're actually talking to each other. All the teachers are talking to those people, and everyone trying to help make this a better system. We're really active. So that's why it worked there. Then I got a call from the States, and I went, I think I've got to go down here now. And I went to Albany, I went to New York, and then I was in New Jersey. I had schools in New Jersey. I mean, it started to just go like that. And that's what's happened over these years. And it's millions of children have had MindUp. I mean, and millions of children doesn't scratch the surface, frankly. But it's definitely, and that's now counting, we have a lot of the world that these kids are doing. We just went into Romania, and MindUp schools are there now. So, and we're in Hong Kong, and we're in Shanghai, and, you know, there's need everywhere. It isn't just us. We have a global tragedy going on here, and we're going to fix it. We're going to fix it. So I'm enjoying this so
And
much.
I'm thinking.
I hope I'm not talking too much.
No. No, I was thinking the same thing about myself, because I think everybody wants to hear you talking. But here's the thing. You're sitting in California. You're a Californian.
Yeah.
Change the world. Start here. Just to show I was paying attention, 6 million students in California, right? What's missing now? What would you and California need to make this happen, top down as well as bottom up, for California's, all the students and
First of all,
children
I
in
would
California?
say that the people who are basically in charge of allocating money have a real system, which means that they're going to know where that money is going. And there's going to be accountability. And that means that we have to be accountable for the gift that they're giving, because they're actually going to give a gift for more mental stability in the classroom, number one. Number two, they should have their programs picked out already. They should really begin to say, okay, I've got this program, I like MindUp, I like whatever the other one's out there. But they're foundational programs, they're not Band-Aids, right? And we're going to change the ethos of these classrooms. And I'll say, let's say, for the first 2 years, let's just do kindergarten, second and third grade. I'm making it up. Make it manageable. Make it something that you actually can do, where you actually are looking and feeling your teachers, your educators as well, and knowing that it's for them, not just for your children. It's really important to be able to give a holistic view of how we're going to look at how we're changing education, right? So as far as the tests being extremely important and all of these things that we're going on our children, we have to back up just a little bit and start talking about how important it is to build a greater human being. I mean, because humans are going to ruin everything. I mean, if we're not taught to be kinder, you know, and actually more productive and actually work together, and that's what I'm saying here. I think we need to figure out a way. I talked to Chuck Schumer, and he wanted to know where the money was going. When I was talking about New York, because we're talking about New York schools right now, and we've got, you know, the Federation and all this is, and mayor and all this. So we're going to be in a lot of schools in New York City. And it would be great for them to be able to say, okay, we're putting mental health preventative programs in every school, and we've got 500 teachers already ready to go, right? That's what I would like. But nobody's talking to each other there. So we have to realize that. Oh, and Chuck said to me, how's it doing? I mean, we're putting a lot of money in New York. I mean, are you seeing blah, blah, blah? And I said, here's the deal. You're not going to get a return on your money, because I don't think anybody knows where to put the money. And I don't even know, they want to know how to check to see if it's even working. So if we don't really look at this as I mean, how do you create a business? You create a business by making sure everything is dotted, crossed, everything's working, their systems are manageable, and we are accountable for what we're doing. So I said, if you don't create any accountable system, and you just put money out, you know, we're not a business. Educators, you know, go to school, our teachers are a mess. What I said to the mayor in New York, I said, why don't you put yourself on the map? Raise the salary of every teacher and put a mental health program in the classroom. They will flock to come to you. I don't know who's listening.
Oh, I think everybody's listening, Goldie. I'm going to give you the opportunity. I think we've got about 5 minutes left. Is that right? So about 5 minutes left. But I want to give you the opportunity. I'm sure people heard that there was a comment, mainstream media headline recently. I'm just going to state the facts of it, which was we need to ignore the feeling part and just get to the content of education.
Who said that?
Well, I'm not going to say it. We're on.
Okay,
This is not meant to be a political comment. It's meant to be for people who care about mental health, social, emotional learning, and things. But given that you've spent 20 years committed to this idea of investing in brain breaks and sort of centering and things, brain health, right? And that we all, I think, in the room here believe that that impacts sort of the academic and, the sort of more hardcore learning outcomes. I just wanted your thoughts on this idea of saying we need to take, don't pay attention to the feelings part, we just need to focus on the important content part.
They're all narcissists. Because narcissists don't feel. So unfortunately, they don't even have a context. God bless them.
And this is why I didn't say who made the original comment, because I didn't want that getting out there. But yes, I thought you'd have a strong reaction to the comment.
No, I mean, feelings are hard to cope with. We're humans. And we have them. We have all of them. Oh my God, that was a line in a movie that I did.
Oh my gosh, me too. No, I'm just.
No. But truly, I mean, that we would reject our emotions. I mean, that ultimately we can win at the game or lose at the game by how we allow our emotions to rule us. We have to watch our emotions, witness them. We don't always have to be a part of them because our brain likes to hang on to like negative stuff and ruminate negative stuff. Sometimes when I lie in bed in the morning and I think about all the things that haven't been done and all the things that need to be done and why didn't that person, I go, oh, I'm getting up and making my coffee and I'm changing the subject because our brain, it's really weird how it's a negative bias brain and it's there to save us, I know. But at the same time, I just feel like, we have to honor our emotions and you know what? Honor our children's emotions. They're going to heal that way. If we don't have that community, whether it's your parent or your caregiver or your best friend, and your emotions are not honored or you're not listened to or you're not heard, we'll never be able to grow beyond the complexity of our emotional construct.
Oh, I don't think there's anything more to say after that, except that you could not be at a better place than an interagency symposium that's committed to whole child between Elizabeth Estes, who has really sort of spearheaded all of this, and then if you're I know you have to run this afternoon, but with Alicia Lieberman, the emotional life of toddlers and working on trauma-informed care. I think I speak for everybody in saying it was so inspiring. I think everybody needed a little bit of a boost from your speaking here, and hopefully you're part of the team pushing this forward in California because it seems like as long as we all join together, there should be no reason why we can't make this happen.
Yeah, I agree. We need each other. Yeah.